The Nintendo Switch has had a phenomenal run at the top when it comes to video games. They've sold over 125 million systems and still counting. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom continues to be a delight as players delve into their 100th, 200th, and even 300th hour out there for people who have nothing else to do when it comes down to it. And hey, I'm not hating on that. But at some point, every single company, when it comes to video games, needs to move on or needs to put into motion those plans for what's next. And when it comes to video games, especially with Nintendo, as soon as the current system is out, Nintendo's already tinkering with ideas, already thinking of different stuff for the next system. Now with the Nintendo Switch, Nintendo has been hard at work with that. They've been thinking about new ideas, they've been thinking about new features, they've been implementing systems and mechanics that they started with the Nintendo Switch, but will be full go on the Nintendo Switch 2. So in this video, I'm gonna go over a few different things that I've heard and also some stuff that I'm predicting when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2 and Nintendo's plan to continue the strong momentum that they have with the Nintendo Switch. Now, if you enjoy videos like this, please make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more Nintendo Switch RPG news and so much more. Now let's go ahead and jump right into it. We're going to start off with the Nintendo Switch 2 and what they're going to do with the marketing campaign. Now this is incredibly important. I know people know that marketing is important, but you got to have the right marketing for the right product with the right name. We saw what happened with the Wii U, and while you can't completely blame marketing or the name, that was a big part of it. That was part of the problem with it. It didn't resonate with fans out there like Nintendo's past products. So Nintendo needs to make sure that the marketing campaign is incredibly aggressive with what this system is called, what it does, and everything. Like, it needs to be a straight up easy enough to understand, but also execution needs to be in the same line as what they saw with the Nintendo Switch. That was a gimmick, or that was a thing that was very straightforward, but it was aggressive. You switch the way that you play. You go from here to there. You can pretty much play any Nintendo game when it comes down to what they release. No more having to have it on 3DS or have it on Game Boy or have it on DS, then also have a separate version for the Wii or the Wii U or whatever the case is, or buying games twice. Everything was on the same system. You have the portable developers and you also have the home console developers coming together to all create games on one system, essentially doing a Super Game Boy, essentially doing a GBA player for the GameCube, but all packed into one and not having to worry about anything else for one price. So the aggressive marketing in terms of what the system is and what you can do with it and what type of games that you can play on it is going to be incredibly important. And I'm hearing that Nintendo is setting up pretty big for that. So of course, when they reveal the system and when they talk about it, which I do think that they're going to follow a very similar plan to what the Nintendo Switch was, where it means they reveal the system later in the year. So I'm thinking 2023, they reveal the system, some details, and then in 2024 sometime it launches. So I think that that aggressive path towards it, we might be seeing sooner than later. Now, next up, when it comes to what Nintendo's going to do with the Nintendo Switch 2, it is going to be more AAA Japanese developers on board early. Now, with the Wii U, Japanese developers, Western developers, nobody was really set on this system. Nintendo had a few different developers here and there. I know that Koei Tecmo was really nice on the system, at least at first. They believed in it, but Bandai Namco, Square Enix, and a lot of other developers only put a little bit of support because they didn't know what was going to happen after the bomba of the Wii U and the Nintendo 3DS having sales strong at the beginning and having some bangers when it comes to like Bravely Default in some games, but a lot of other games really didn't go anywhere. So a lot of the Japanese developers and pretty much most of the Western developers were like, nah, we're good on this. So this time around, with the success of the Nintendo Switch and Nintendo seemingly, based on what I'm hearing, doing an essential Switch 2. It's not going to be some type of crazy new different type of concept, new things, new features, different stuff, but it's not going to be crazily different from what they did with the Switch. There are going to be more AAA Japanese developers on board early with this one. You probably shouldn't have to wait like 2 years or 3 years like we had to wait with the Nintendo Switch in order to get some of those games. Now, what could we see? I think that we can see stuff like Scarlet Nexus or Tales of Arise. I think that Bandai Namco is going to be very strong on the system at first. I think that Square Enix is going to have a number of titles. Some titles that didn't come over from Koei Tecmo are going to be over there as well. I think that Sega is going to release some of their titles that didn't release on the Nintendo Switch on the Switch 2. So expect to see a lot of AAA Japanese ports on the Nintendo Switch system early in its life, sprinkled throughout that first year, 2 years or so. And then once they get caught up, you'll see more new games as well that are launching alongside PS5 and Xbox Series and PC. And then even potentially exclusives as well, like the Nintendo Switch had with Octopath Traveler and also Shin Megami Tensei. Now, one thing that Nintendo's very keen on doing as well, which we've seen in their investor briefings and also some things that I'm hearing, is incentivizing people that have the Nintendo Switch to smoothly transition over. Now, this has been debated and talked about quite a bit, but backwards compatibility to me is one of those things based off of what Nintendo said in the past, and also Nintendo wanting to incentivize people who own a Nintendo Switch to get a Switch 2. They've directly said that in their investor briefings. They talked about Nintendo accounts as well and having those migrate over. Well, you're not going to have a smooth transition like Furukawa is saying if you don't have Nintendo accounts that migrate over, where you keep your progress, you keep your games, you keep the flow of what you had on the Nintendo Switch. It would be incredibly obtuse to have a smooth transition, but then nothing actually carries over. And I think that Nintendo's going to go with NVIDIA, they're going to go with what they've used before, but just advance it. So I do think that backwards compatibility, having all of your access to your Nintendo Switch cartridges and games that you've already played or games that you haven't played yet, play them on your Switch 2. You have an instant library of right there, right at launch, which the Nintendo Switch did not have, which led to a lot of people doubting what the system was going to be able to do. You didn't have access to all of those Wii U games over. They were porting over a lot of those titles. So it kind of put a little bit of concern in people's eyes when it came to the Nintendo Switch, especially with the price tag as well, with $300 on there, right? Seemed a bit high considering what the Wii U did and how that didn't go so well at the $300 and $350 price point. But Nintendo was able to come through with a lot of big games in that first year, which is going to be important, and we're going to get to that in just a bit. But I think that really incentivizing the Switch owners to move over when they feel it's comfortable, when there is something, when you can have that smooth transition and be able to transfer things over, that is going to be a big part in the success of the Nintendo Switch 2, especially if it's done right. Nintendo has not nailed transitions when it comes to what they're going to do next with accounts and all that. This is the first time that they actually have a real account system that can transfer over to where you do have games tied to it. They never had that before, so that was a problem. They had a little bit on the Wii U, but it wasn't really to where they can transfer over to the Nintendo Switch in that type of way with real backwards compatibility with the format change and everything, and also with the architecture change. Everything just changed from the Wii U, from the 3DS to the Nintendo Switch. So of course you're going to have to restart everything, and of course you're going to have to restart the whole online system. The new MPLN system came in and took over what they had before for like a decade plus. So there was a lot of change, a lot of overturn, but now you're getting into that next phase with it, with this next system, and you don't have to overturn everything like you did before. And this kind of goes hand in hand with the next thing here, and that is not completely dropping the Nintendo Switch. Now look guys, no matter what you want to say with the power of the system or the performance of some of the games, the Nintendo Switch is still selling. It's still selling. People are still buying games. If you look at Japan, it is completely dominated with Nintendo Switch titles, despite the Xbox Series, despite the PlayStation 5 and those games being out and systems coming out and all this different type of stuff. The Nintendo Switch is still dominating in a lot of areas. The Nintendo Switch can still have top selling games. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is literally carrying the Switch on its back at this point and dragging multiple other Nintendo Switch games that are evergreen titles with it. Games like Animal Crossing New Horizons, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Super Mario Odyssey, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Super Mario Maker, New Super Mario Bros. A lot of these games are getting second, third, fourth, and fifth life because of Tears of the Kingdom, and how that game is really just propping up this old Nintendo Switch 2017 back to the top of the charts. Now that's obviously not going to last, forever or anything, but you still want to have some of those sales. You still want to have a bit of a marketplace. Nintendo is in a pretty unique position in terms of for them. Now, Microsoft and Sony, they do this all the time. This is nothing new for them, but for Nintendo, the system that they've had before in the past is usually dead and buried by this point. 6-7 years, it's done. They've already moved on and pretty much dropped everything. But with the Nintendo Switch, you don't have to do that. There's a large amount of children who play. There are people who necessarily don't have the most money and really just can afford a few big Nintendo first-party games here and there. you don't have to drop that when it comes to the next gen. You can create cross-gen titles, you can create stuff like that. Nintendo's not going to go super all out on graphics like Microsoft and Sony, so creating a cross-gen game where you have better performance on the Nintendo Switch 2 compared to the regular Switch for select games, I don't think will be too big of a problem. They've done it before a little bit when it comes to like Twilight Princess from the GameCube to the Wii. You also look at The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild from the Wii U to the Switch, but I think that they can do it a little bit more with this one and actually take it beyond the one launch title. You can actually extend that to maybe a few more titles, some other games here and there. So I think that the plan with Switch 2 is also to not necessarily leave behind the Nintendo Switch, and you can grab more people to get into the ecosystem, get people who you haven't got at this point, and then get them to transition over to the Nintendo Switch 2 down the line. So I think that's also part of the plan and why Nintendo's not letting go of the Nintendo Switch, and it doesn't seem like they're going to let go of that platform anytime soon when it comes to at least just supporting it, online play, new games, titles. Like, I think that there's going to be some other stuff as well. Now, things are ramping down. We don't really know the lineup after Pikmin in July, and they just threw out everybody 1-2 switch in between Zelda and Pikmin, just kind of like a throwaway game with no trailer. But at the same time, I still feel that there's some other things that they have up their sleeve for the rest of the year, and there's probably some stuff that they have for next year as well, not as large scale as they kind of push and get everybody ready for the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, the most important thing in this whole video, and I think what really is going to define the Nintendo Switch 2 and how successful it is, it's going to be that launch game and that launch window title. So within that first 9 months, what are you launching the system with and what games are coming afterwards? And to me, a big 3D Mario game or a big Mario Kart. Those are the only two options that I can see based off the development cycles that Nintendo has that they can have at launch to help really push the system. Mr. Furukawa, the president and CEO of Nintendo, knows more than anybody that you have to have that title ready. You can't do what you did with the Nintendo 3DS. You can't do what you did with the Nintendo Wii U and have some type of experimental, maybe gimmicky title like Nintendo Land. Cool, fun little game, but it's not really going to bring everybody over if your gimmick and your marketing isn't strong enough. However, a game like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, despite anything that goes wrong when it comes to what people think about the power or this or the memory or whatever, that game can overpower people's emotions and people's, I would say, skepticism and say, okay, let me just get this system so I can play that game. And they did that with the Nintendo Switch with Breath of the Wild, and it worked out incredibly. So I do think that a big new 3D Mario game or a big new Mario Kart is absolutely on the way. One of those two will be a launch title, and then another one will probably be released within the first 3 months afterwards. I think taking the same approach they did with the Nintendo Switch, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild as the big launch game, and the following month they had Mario Kart 8 Deluxe as a supplemental title. Now, Nintendo didn't know what that game was going to end up doing, but at the same time, it's still a strong IP that literally carried the Wii U for whatever that's worth. That was the best-selling game on the Wii U. Nintendo knew that there was a lot of people who wanted to probably play Mario Kart 8, but didn't have the Wii U, so they can sell it on the Nintendo Switch. And I think that with this time, they've already been developing this next new Mario Kart game. It's already been in development. They've been developing the next big new 3D Mario game. So what you do is that you launch one of them with it, and the next one comes a few months later. Let it grow and impact the system. And then throughout the rest of the months, you do what you did with the Nintendo Switch as well. Now, last time you had Splatoon, you had ARMS. You're probably not going to have those, considering Splatoon 3 just came out in 2022. Also ARMS, that's the Mario Kart team, so they're working on that new Mario Kart. So you're not going to have those, but you can have Intelligent Systems. Maybe you have a game from them. You do have Monolith Soft. They had Xenoblade Chronicles 2 at the first launch year of the Nintendo Switch. I think that their next game, they've been working on that. They can maybe have that ready by summer or even fall of that year, or maybe even you have a big port of Xenoblade Chronicles X. Maybe that is ready or something that they can have on there. That would be a very good title that the majority of people did not play. That would be a brand new game, and with the Nintendo Switch 2 hardware being stronger and everything, maybe you get that thing running, you know, at 1440p, 60 frames per second, and then you add or flesh in some extra content. That would be something to where people would really get excited for in the core RPG base, and people that just want to see what the Nintendo Switch 2 can do. You also have your partners as well. There could be some exclusive third-party stuff here and there, stuff that they work on with for exclusives. For example, like Octopath Traveler, that was one of the big exclusives that they showed off at the 2017 event. Maybe you have something like that for the first year as well. So Nintendo definitely has plenty of teams to make different games and everything. Like, they have that set up. That's going to be the most important thing, getting that lineup really settled and situated. Now, I will talk about what games I think are going to come out when and how the lineup is going to work based off the development in a separate video, but that's a whole nother thing that we need to tackle because there is a lot to get into with that. But what do you guys think about this when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2, how Nintendo is gearing up, getting ready, my battle plan or strategy? Remember, this is some stuff that I've heard and also some speculation on my end as well in terms of what they're going to do based off of what they've done with the Switch. But what do you guys think? Anything that I missed, anything that you want to add in, let me know in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out our other videos right here on screen. We'll catch you for the next one. Peace.